Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you and welcome to our March 23rd, 2023 Planning Board meeting. We are happy to have you here tonight, and again, thank you for your participation. We'll follow our agenda as printed, and if you'd like to speak at any time, please make sure you complete one of these green forms and turn it into our secretary. When you get up to the podium, if you please remember to state your name and address for our records. Okay, may we have a roll call, please, Secretary?
Mr. Barhu,
Present.
Mr. McLean,
Here.
Mr. Nooner,
Present.
Mr. Robinson,
Present.
Mr. Servance is absent. Ms. Washington is present. Mr. Weatherholtz.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We don't have our minutes. Minutes were completed, but it was not properly sent out, so we will hold that until next month, and we'll have approval of minutes for the 2 months. And we will move from here. May we have item number 4, please? Would you read, Mrs. Secretary, Ms. Washington?
Okay, item number 4, Costco Site Plan, DEV 2022-122, quasi judicial hearing.
Okay, may we hear from staff, please?
Good evening, Planning Board members. How are you this evening?
Great.
Good to see everyone.
Good
My name
evening.
is Paula Long. I'm a planner here with the city. And tonight I am here to present a request by Russell McFall, Colliers Engineering and Design, on behalf of Daytona Beach Property Holdings Retail LLC, the property owner, to approve a major site plan to allow for the construction of 161,774 plus or minus square feet for a Costco wholesale facility and 24 pump fueling facility on 17.17 plus or minus acres of land. The site is generally located at 1894 West ISB within the One Daytona mixed-use development. It is pushed back a little bit, but it is actually holding that address. The aerial view, as you can see, it is vacant. It is developed as a parking lot currently, and a small portion of this development is going to encompass the retention pond. As you can see there, that will be redeveloped at the time. Future land use for this property currently is commercial amusement. And the zoning designation is planned development general, surrounded by mostly the same, with a small portion to the northwest holding an industrial M4 designation. A little bit of the timeline that's associated with this particular site. In 2007, the City Commission approved the Daytona Live Plan Master Development Agreement via Ordinance 07355, rezoning 71 plus or minus acres of property that allowed for construction and operation of a mixed-use project that included multifamily residential units, hotels, and various commercial uses. In 2012, the Commission approved the first amended and restated Daytona Mixed-Use PD via Ordinance 12290, allowing for the development of One Daytona, a 189 plus or minus acre mixed-use development that added office uses, a movie theater, retail, restaurants, and other entertainment uses. In 2016, the first amendment to the first amended and restated Daytona Mixed-Use PD via Ordinance 16141 added 3 plus or minus acres to the PD for a total of 192 acres, and also allowed for an increase to the maximum height of street lights in the development. And then most recently, in 2022, the Commission approved the second amendment to the first amended and restated Daytona Mixed-Use PD via Ordinance 2022-280, which added an additional 4.1 plus or minus acres to the PD, bringing the total to 196.08 plus or minus acres within that development. Since the approval of this PD, there have been 8 site plans that have been approved as a part of this phase development project. Costco will be the 9th. and that is represented by the blue section on the left side of the project there. Here you can be able to see the dimension plan, which actually shows the structure as well as the parking that will be associated with that. The proposed architectural elevations, and a little bit about the project details there. The city's land development code, as it relates to the square footage for this development, does require a minimum of 565 parking spaces. A parking study was actually performed by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE, which found peak days require more than the maximum allowable parking for the LDC at 125%, which would be 707 spaces of the minimum allowed. The study indicated that during peak season days, which generally are Saturdays in the month of December, I love Costco. If anybody knows anything about Costco, when the December time hits, it's packed, it's jam-packed. There's never enough parking. It seems you're waiting and waiting and waiting. That's the reason why they're asking for the additional parking. It's really necessary, and I can't wait for Costco to get here. I just want to add that. So generally, we get 125% of the minimum amount of parking spaces that are allowed. That parking study, as I mentioned, did indicate that there is a need for it. So they're asking for an additional 14% on top of that, which would be an additional 79 spaces. The building design does comply with the first amended and restated Daytona mixed-use PD. The landscaping does comply with the PD as well as detailed in the staff report that you've received. Signage for the property development is also in compliance and meets the standards for the first amended and restated Daytona PD, mixed-use PD. The traffic impact analysis, which is the TIA, we hear about that a lot, for the proportionate fair share agreement for the project will need to be approved and the payment identified proportionately for this project prior to the issuance of the site plan approval letter for the project. Utilities, there are some outstanding technical comments for both utilities and the fire department. Those also will need to be resolved prior to the issuance of that approval letter. Staff does recommend approval of the major site plan to allow for the construction of 161,774 plus or minus square feet for the Costco wholesale facility and 24 pump fueling facility on 17.17 acres plus or minus acres of land. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to approve this application. This does conclude my report, and the applicant is here to answer any questions that you may have. They brought the whole group for all your questions.
Great. Questions for staff?
Okay.
Mr. Robinson?
I don't know if this, I should ask staff, but staff is making the recommendation. First of all, how come we didn't list Wawa on page 2 as part of some of the existing use?
That actually is not a part of this particular PD.
That's right.
It's outside of it. So if you look back,
I thought when we list the existing uses within the vicinity, we
not the
list,
vicinity, it's actually the PD. That's the one that we're talking about that's a part of this project.
but Wawa is right next to Best Buy,
It's-
and you have listed
Correct.
Best Buy, but not Wawa.
It's,
If I may, the Wawa's is actually, it's in the Best, is it in the Best Buy PD? I think it's in the Best Buy PD. So it's in an adjacent PD. It's not located within the PD for One Daytona. So
This next,
if you look, if you look in the south where it's the Best Buy, the PetSmart, Skip's Boots, there's a number of different retail and facilities out there. We don't list all of them. We want to give you an idea this is intended to just give you an idea of where this thing is located in the proximity, so.
Okay. On that particular strip of ISB, I'm trying to determine why do we need another gas station with 24 pumps?
That, you can ask the applicant that, they'll be
Well,
able to answer.
we are recommending approval.
recommend- yeah, we're
So why are we recommending, what is your justification, or what's your reasoning for recommending another 24 pumps of gas when there's like 4 gas stations along that strip?
She's just a presenter.
Just to be clear, Mr.
Hello, Mr. Ben?
Just to be clear, Mr. Robinson, the criteria for the board's review are listed on pages 3 through 5 of the staff report, and staff's recommendation is that it complies with the criteria that we're charged with reviewing and determining whether to grant the site plan.
Do we address need, and do we address impact when we look at the site plan to see how it impacts the area and why there is a need? Or is it in another hearing?
That's not our responsibility.
I don't want to
I have nothing against
usurp the
Costco.
planning board's role, but
Yeah.
I don't see a place in the criteria for determining whether there's a need for gas pumps.
And I will say the city commission just recently approved an amendment to the PD that specifically included the gas pumps for this location. So it allowed the gas station to go in this location specifically, I think, for this project. So the city commission was aware of it, and they approved it for that reason.
Okay. It wasn't, I didn't see that listed in your report, so.
That was part of the amendment to the PD. It's an allowable use within this PD agreement.
And so we don't discuss the impact that this site is going to have on the rest of the area?
Well,
How can we approve something without looking at all the factors?
yeah, so I
That's
think
involved.
the question that you have on impact would be a good question to ask staff. In staff's review of the relevant criteria, which are listed on pages 3 through 5, do any of those criteria deal with off-site impacts, which is, I think, what you're referring to, correct?
Not just, yeah, but also the environmental impact, the economic impact, and the impact to the surrounding businesses. How is that gonna, how is that benefiting the city and the citizens of Daytona Beach? That's my question too.
I think that would be a question for the applicant to answer.
Yeah, right.
Well, then,
And as far as staff, with the criteria that Mr. Gross was mentioning, on page 5, F, issued concurrency certificate, what we look for is the impact to the surrounding area and the concurrency, making sure that it meets all of the concurrency requirements, which it will meet all of the concurrency requirements established by our land development code.
I'll leave that for the applicant
Applicant, okay, thank you. Ms.
to
Washington?
assist with the question.
Okay.
The
Ms.
answer.
Washington?
I was just going to say that the planning department makes those decisions according to the guidelines that they have. When we get the project, we are approving that it is within the guidelines or the purview of what we deal with. So the Wawas, that was approved some time ago.
I'm not opposing to Costco or Wawa. What I'm looking at is that it was left off the report, and it was directly right next to Costco. Another gas station is right next to another gas station, which is next to another gas station. So it was not indicated in the report. So my question was, why was that left off? And Mr. Dennis have explained that it's not relevant
To this project.
to this project. And my comment to that is, if it affects the citizens, if it affects the area, it is relevant.
Okay, well, we have the applicant address that in just a second. Any other questions for our staff? I do have one thing. We do have a school that's close by, correct?
We do.
And will there be some sort of separation that keeps our kids safe from that parking lot?
Yes,
That-
the school actually is
It's
on
kinda
the side.
corner, right?
Exactly. It's majority on the side behind the movie theater, and then there's a portion that actually abuts a portion of that, and then that retaining area there, but they're required to make sure that
Okay,
they
is there
put in
fence back there?
appropriate
I'm not sure.
buffering.
Yeah,
Okay.
there were specific requirements in a PD agreement for buffering to the school, and they're complying with those requirements.
Okay. Thank you very much. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Mark Watts with the law firm of Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard, DeLand, our other office. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening. We've got a handful of folks here in case we need to get them up. Heidi Jules with Costco. They came in for the hearing tonight. Doug Brookbank is the architect that's worked on the project. Russell McFall is the civil engineer. And then we've got Roxanne Ribicoff, who's the president of One Daytona, who's here supporting the project. So let me just quickly respond to the question that was raised with regard to the gas station. I think that the list on page 2 with regard to the uses that are next door you're right, it doesn't include Wawa. Seacoast Bank, I think, is also in there. So I don't think this is an exhaustive list. It's just the larger uses that are in that center, which is part of a separate plan development. With regard to the need or appropriateness of that use, that question was asked when we came through with the amendment to the PD last year. And if you may recall, that was second amendment to the first amended and restated development agreement came through the planning board and then went to the city commission. And we actually added the use of fueling station to the One Daytona PD at that point in time. So that question of whether or not it was an appropriate use was answered when we added that to the plan development as a permitted use within the footprint here. I'll just give you my anecdotal response to it. I've worked in downtown Daytona since 1999. I live in DeLand, and in the time from 1999 till now, the 7-Eleven, what was that, at Fentress, was the only gas station that I could stop at on ISB, from Daytona going to DeLand. And it's just been in the past couple of years that we've gotten a couple of other alternatives. Costco in particular, that is a members only fueling station, so it's there for the people that are members of their their club, their wholesale club. So that is kind of part of their brand, and it's a feature of their membership to have that gas station there and available to their members. So I think that's kind of why that has been added to the PD and is a key component of this overall site. With regard to the school, number one, the school actually faces Dunn, so the entrance and everything is off of Dunn, kind of to the north. We do have a separate easement with the school and some separate agreements with them that require a certain amount of buffering, and we're maintaining all of those with this. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions. As Paula, graciously, I was going to just say, well, I'm just going to go with her endorsement, based on the love of Costco. Yeah. But I will say that, we're excited. I think from the One Daytona, I've worked on the One Daytona, what is now the One Daytona project, since about 2000 or 2001 in one form or another. I know that we're excited to see this come in and be part of, what brings people into that whole area. So I'm happy to answer any other questions. We are not seeking any kind of waivers from concurrency or anything like that. We still have to meet all of those tests, including prop share payment as appropriate to handle any traffic impacts. And it's a new noise. So anyway, with that, I'm here to answer any other questions you might have.
Phone. Yeah. Are there, yes, Mr. McLean?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was reading this information, and good evening, I was reading this, the information, and Mr. McFall, working at Colliers Engineering Design, if I've got it right, it looks like you folks are out of Eaton, Pennsylvania, and I went and checked a little more. It's a town of about 1,400 people, so obviously you guys are probably a big deal in Eaton, Pennsylvania, I'm sure. But we're hoping you won't be strangers, and as we go through this process together, my fellow colleagues will tell you that one thing that I pay attention to on this board is parking. It's kind of my thing. And I just think it's wonderful that we have a situation here where we're asking for an increase in parking.
Yeah.
Because the challenge is if you don't have enough, you don't get a do-over.
That's right.
And understanding that, as Paul has said, on the weekends at Costco, it gets pretty darn crazy. So I'm
Right.
excited that we've taken that extra step to look at that and to be sure that we have the parking capacity that we need, so.
We felt it was an important component. That's why we actually got Kimley Horn to do the study so that we had not only the request for it, but the backup information to show that it's needed.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Will the gas pumps be open 24 hours a day?
I'm gonna phone a friend and bring Doug up here to ask answer that question about the operational hours.
Hi, I'm Doug Brookbank with MG2. No, they won't be. They're typically opened in the morning around 6 or 6:30 in the morning for rush hour traffic and that, and they close an hour after the warehouse closes.
Okay.
So, and the warehouse closes as well. So this is not a 24-hour facility for the fuel. There's also no convenience store out there or mini mart. They don't sell bottles of water or anything. It's just fuel.
Okay. Thank you.
I have my question for you.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts?
yes, sir.
Go ahead.
For the applicant, how did you determine that you needed 24 pumps, given all the other gas stations along that strip?
I think that's part of the standard model. Doug, I don't know if you want to address that as well. It's part of their standard site plan approach.
Sure. So much like the parking a little bit and making sure you have enough, as a membership club, they know sort of their member base. They hope to do well here and have a lot of members. The last thing you want to create is sort of friction waiting in line. So we do try and design the facility. Costco's really unique in their fueling facility. You actually, it doesn't matter which side of the dispenser you're on. They have extra long hoses, and it's a one-way through the facility. So again, much like parking, we try and design so that we remove friction and we can get people to move, through those spaces quickly.
But given your low prices, as you advertised, how is that going to play well with the other businesses that sell gas along there?
Well, they do offer a good price. So like anything maybe in the world, some competition is good. And again, it's a member-based
I understand that.
retail. So you do have to buy the membership.
Right.
But that gives you that access to those things.
One of my concern is that you're going to put somebody out of business, which is going to have a economic impact
Yeah.
within that area with empty, stores or empty lots,
Right.
unemployed folks.
So I'd say in response to that, one, we're here at a site plan, so it's, the criteria as far as need and everything else was addressed when we went through the planning amendment process. But specifically as to that point, one of the things, this being a membership-driven location, it's going to operate a little bit differently than what you have with Wawa or what you have with Racetrack down the street. Here, right now, I think the nearest Costco's are either in the South Orlando market or in Jacksonville. And so you're kind of filling in a large gap in the market area. So you're going to have people that are members joining this area that are coming from other places that typically wouldn't come to Wawa or typically wouldn't come to, it's almost like, kind of our Buc-ee's draw that we've got out at LPGA now. People will come here because of the Costco and use that fueling station that wouldn't go to the Wawa and that wouldn't go to the Racetrack otherwise, just by the very nature of this use coming in and being a membership-driven location that's going to draw people from out of the market area.
Just to comment a little bit, on the north side, well, you have the Buc-ee's, then you have the 7-Eleven, you have the
Sure.
Racetrack, and you have Sam's Club. Same scenario.
Right.
I mean, sometime if competition is good, maybe they'll drop the prices.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I was about to say, as you know, I live out there. What the result has been is
All of
that
them are
the
full.
local gas stations have sharpened their pencils.
Yep.
They definitely have.
Absolutely. And then, I was going to Buc-ee's a couple days ago and said they need another side, Buc-ee's too, because all the pumps were full.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess we have more cars. My question is, because we have more cars, the traffic impact.
Yes.
And it's that in that area, because the same congestion we see with the Sam's Club and then that whole Tango outlet is the same thing that will happen to One Daytona in the same side. What are they planning on doing for as the traffic patterns, getting in and out? I know it has been done, the study has been done, but I can see the same thing happening, especially with Costco and that many more cars going in that area.
Absolutely. So this was one of those things, the great thing is we're coming into a site that was planned for, we've got up to 1.6 million square feet of entitlement for the One Daytona project. And so for a couple of decades now, we've been planning for the level of traffic that ultimately would work in there. So all of the ISB improvements that have gone in through the years and, kind of how you see the configuration of ISB and everything, number one, has all been done with the idea of Daytona Live, or now One Daytona, in the background of what was going to occur. That being said, the particular, traffic improvements and the TIA and everything else has been closely coordinated with both DOT, the county, and the city to make sure we've got circulation. So we'll have, improved connections to ISB. We'll have improved connections that go back out to Dunn Avenue. All of that's been coordinated. And again, we're going through the typical process, with the county and DOT and the city to make sure those connections are there and the flow is appropriate.
Thank you. Any other questions for applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you
sir.
for your time.
Appreciate you. We do have a couple of green forms. Well, one was Mr. Waltz. The other one is Miss Annie Ruby. Ann Ruby?
Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I'm so excited about this Costco coming. You have no idea. Right now, in order to go to Costco, I have to drive to Orlando, and you just don't go as often.
Okay.
And I think having it here will be a big boon. I've heard are a very good employer. They try to employ people for life, promote from within, treat their employees decently. And I think that's something that we can use in this community. The other thing is, just like if their gas pumps make people sharpen their pencils with gas, maybe with their grocery prices, people will sharpen their pencils with groceries. Because it seems like it's capricious right now how much prices go up on the groceries in the grocery store. So I am very excited about this. And the only question I hope what I would have is, when are they going to open the doors? And that's a serious question. I really would like to know.
I don't have any other green forms. Anyone would like to speak for again? Okay, we do have one more. Mr. Nicholson?
Mr. Public.
Yeah.
John Nixon, 413 North Grandview. What you may not realize is there are so many in the top 5 large companies for this type of thing. This fills in our top 5. We have Walmart, we have Sam's. So this is basically, it's putting us in another tier, because few cities our size will have all 5 of the top 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't have any other green forms. Nope, I don't have any other green forms. Anyone would like to speak for or against this? Going once, twice, gone. May we have a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Move approval of agenda item number 4, major site plan approval, DV 2022-122, Costco.
May I have a second? Okay, motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Those have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a
You're
good evening.
welcome. Take care. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Ms. Washington, may we have item number 5, please?
Certainly. Item number 5, Sporty's Car Wash. Plan Development General, PDG, rezoning, DEV 2021-084, quasi judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
Good evening, Rose Askew, Project Manager for the city. I am filling in for Hannah Ward. She's not here, so I will try to do Hannah and our city proud. I normally do text amendments. So this is a request by Corey Brown Esquire with Storch Law Firm on behalf of Daytona 1500 LLC, who's the property owner, to rezone 2.11 plus or minus acres of land from Tourist Office Restaurant, which is T2 zoning, and Planned Development General, PDG, to PDG to allow for the development of a 7,100 square foot plus or minus automated car wash and enclosed vacuum court.
Wow.
A little bit of project history. In 1989, the City Commission approved the Castle Adventure Plan Development Entertainment District, and it was approved by ordinance number 89-102. That plan development agreement was approved to allow the development of an 18-hole miniature golf course on the northern half of the property, presently zoned Plan Development General. The miniature golf course was demolished in 2001, and since it was demolished, that portion of the property has remained vacant. The southern half of the property has been operated as a number of different restaurants since 2000. The structure is still remaining, but it has also been vacant since 2020. So there have been no other licenses that have been approved to operate on that property since 2020. This is a location map that shows it. The property is generally located on the northwest corner of West International Speedway Boulevard and Hagen Terrace. An aerial view of the property that shows the current conditions. The future land use on the property is retail. And the current zoning is T2 and Plan Development General, and the proposed zoning is going to be Plan Development General to make all of the zoning consistent on the property. This is a aerial view again of what the property currently looks like. And then what I did is put an overlay over it to show what the proposed car wash will look like once it's developed. So project details. The project is to develop a 7,100 plus or minus square foot automated car wash and enclosed vacuum court. The existing structure on the property, which has been utilized for restaurants, will be redeveloped to accommodate the automated car wash. A new structure will be built to house a private office and storage on the rear of the property to accommodate the new car wash use. For stormwater, an on-site stormwater retention facility will be constructed in conjunction with the development. The stormwater facility and the pond will meet all of St. John's Water, River Management, and city zoning regulations for it. Landscaping, the applicant is proposing to comply with all of the landscaping requirements in our land development code. So this is a site of the existing development, and then on the bottom is a rendering of the proposed site development from what it will look like off of International Speedway Boulevard. Proposed modifications. So access and circulation. The proposed development contemplates one entrance on Hagen Terrace and two exits, one on International Speedway Boulevard and one on Hagen Terrace. For cross-access, the applicant is asking to waive the requirement for cross-access to be able to go from one property to another one for security purposes for the development. The distance between access points, the land development code has a minimum distance between access points. The applicant is asking to waive that requirement, and I'll give you more information on that. Excuse me. So they're asking to accommodate the internal circulation of the property for the car wash. They're asking to waive the requirement for 50 feet between the two proposed access points on Hagen Terrace to allow each access point to be one way. So typically we require the 50 feet because there's both ways in and out. Yeah. Because the two are only going to be one way in and one way out, they're asking to modify that.
Makes sense.
The parking lot entrance. The parking lot entrance driveway stacking lane distance is typically 25 feet. The applicant is requesting, to modify that from the property line to the center line of the closest parking space. They're going to provide a minimum of 25 feet from the right-of-way line to the center line of the closest parking space. For modifications for architecture, for building colors, they're asking to waive the minimum LRV of 70 and maximum application of 20% of use of accent colors not meeting the LRV requirements. Building materials, They're asking to waive the maximum 10% permitted for use of materials on walls. For garage doors, they're asking to waive this requirement due to the nature of the use. Excuse me, and required architectural features, roof, plane changes, and wall changes. They're asking to waive the minimum, excuse me, of 15% for the east and west elevations. For window coverage, there is a request to waive the minimum, to waive a minimum of 15% of the east and west elevations. The reason and I need to go back to the required architectural features, because the reason they're asking for it is because on the west side, for the architectural features, the Halloween store on ISB is very close to them. So being able to put that in there, you're not really going to actually be able to see it because the two structures are so close. You wouldn't even be able to see that if they put it in. For signage, the applicants are asking for 3 signs. One is going to be the existing pole sign that's on the property. They're going to retrofit that sign and use what they have there. And the 2 wall signs, they're asking to be able to, in lieu of putting in the required signage that would be allowed there, they're asking to be able to put in 2 signs, 2 wall signs that are going to be 81 square feet each. The next slide shows you what the proposed retrofit of the current pole sign will look like. And so I enlarged the actual signage area so you could see exactly what would be on there. So provided all LDC modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval to rezone 2.11 plus or minus acres of land from T2 and Plan Development General to Plan Development General to allow for the development of an automated car wash and enclosed vacuum court. A majority vote of planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission. The item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the Commission for first reading on May 3rd, 2023, and for second reading on May 17th, 2023. I also wanted to add to this. This is a property that's already developed, so we will not be tearing down trees for animals or any of that stuff. And the car wash is going to use, Dennis, am I saying this correctly? Is it recycled water or is it recycled water? They're going to be using recycled water. Thank you.
Okay. Question for staff.
Yeah, Rose, I have a number of multifaceted and complicated questions for you. I'm kidding. You did a great job. I know you don't do this. I thought I'd have a little fun with you. Excellent presentation. Well done.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yes, Ms.
On the architectural, well, I'll just wait until.
Oh, you want to wait for the applicant?
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
I wasn't clear on the signage in terms of the height. Will it be comparable to the other signs in the area, or will it be higher?
It's going to be the existing sign that's already there. They're not increasing the height or anything. They're just changing the actual signage that's on it.
Okay. Now, they're going to change the wall signs.
Well, they'll be adding wall signs that's going to be for the actual development for the car wash. Right now, the signage that's there was signage for a restaurant.
I understand. But I'm talking about they're going from 80, they want to go up to 81 square feet per sign.
Right now, they can have 120 square feet of signage based on the T2 zoning that this property had previously, and they can put as many signs as they want up there as long as they don't go over 120 square feet. In lieu of that, they're asking to only have 2 signs and make those 2 signs 81 square feet each. One sign's going to be on the front, the other side will be on the Hagen Terrace side.
And will those 2 signs exceed the one? Wouldn't those 2 signs exceed the 120 square feet?
That was what was in the previous plan development agreement that was approved. They are now coming in and doing a new plan development agreement for this one, and this is the signage they're asking for in lieu of what was in the previous, for the previous development. Because it's a completely different development. You're talking about a restaurant versus a car wash. So the type of signage that you put up for a restaurant is not going to be consistent with what you need for a car wash.
Well, it's a business, so
Correct.
it's still an advertisement of their product, regardless of what the product is. So when I look at the signage, when you increase the sign, what about the other businesses? We have a discussion earlier about the waivers and whether or not, if every business comes in and asks for waivers, we should maybe revisit the code to determine whether or not the current meet, is the current numbers are meeting the community needs or the business needs. So if we continually give waivers that exceeds the zoning requirement, why have those? Why have those numbers there? I don't see the need for a excess of the 120 when the other businesses have complied with those numbers.
No, sir. The other plan development agreements that we've approved that are right along that street, they've all gotten modifications for signage. It's just, this particular one is asking for what they need for their business. But in all plan development agreements, I've always seen where they get modifications from our land development code for signage. But in addressing staff, I can only tell you, when they come in to make a request, we go through what the procedures are and what's allowed in the land development code for signage. If the applicant chooses to request modifications, it comes to the board to make their recommendation to the city commission as to whether or not you all want to approve the actual modifications. But as staff, we don't have the authority to tell them, no, they can't request them.
I understand the request. So what you're saying, the other businesses have exceeded the 120 square feet. So
When they've done plan developments, yes, sir.
along that strip.
That's correct. They all do their own signage plan. That's what a plan development agreement does. It allows you
that.
to be able to
However,
do things
so that
outside of what the code would
these
allow you to do.
signs will fit into the other businesses.
They're not required to make their signage fit into another person's plan development agreement.
No. You misunderstand. What I'm saying to you is, if we approve these, the waivers for the signage,
Yes, sir.
it'll be comparable to the other business signs along that strip.
That's not a question I can answer. The applicant may be able to answer that.
Well, you're making a recommendation.
I
that-
can
Go ahead.
tell you that staff will say that we feel that the signage is consistent with the area, with ISB, and with the surrounding businesses.
That's what so it is staff.
Yeah, we
determined.
find it to be consistent.
Okay, then, that's thank you.
Is it, okay.
I think just to chime in on the discussion a little bit, and that would probably be part of my question is, because you get businesses coming with their own brand and they want a larger sign. I know signs attract businesses and attract customers and so forth. And I think, is it comparable to the other businesses? Is that what we want to see when we're driving down our main thoroughfare coming into our city? Do we want to see huge signs, or we want to see consistency in signs? I think that's what you're looking at, but I think, and that's what I would want to see. I wouldn't want to see a big gigantic sign here and a small one here and one light up in the sky over here. And it needs to be consistent because this is our city. And so when we presenting or looking at it, as long as it's fair and it looks decent and it fits within the city dynamics, our mode, what we're looking for, I think it's a good thing as long as it's decent and not super exceed. I mean, not gonna put a big billboard sign in front of your business and say, come on in, because it's inappropriate to put it on a main thoroughfare. But I think the question was, will it be consistent with the other businesses as we're driving into our city or driving out? I mean, wanted to be recognized, and I know applicant will talk more about that, so.
I did want to say one last thing. This is the only car wash along that strip.
Yeah.
That's great.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a comment on this
Okay, Mr.
too,
McLean, yeah.
is, you're looking at a scenario where you could be looking at one or two things. As Rose mentioned about the T2 district, we're talking 120 square feet and as many signs as we want. We could be talking 10 4x3 signs.
Yeah.
They get into a beautification standpoint as well. And as you both mentioned, gentlemen, consistency. And I believe that having only two, perhaps a little larger, 42 square feet over 2 signs, that's 21 square feet apiece. In the big picture, in my opinion, not that, the gravity isn't that much.
Yeah, well, personally, just to do something with that building, that area there to clean it up, that's a big thing for me.
from my
Thank you.
point-
May we hear from?
From my
I'm
point
sorry.
of view,
Mr. Newman?
as far as the signage, if I'm looking for a car wash, I want to be able to find it. And I don't have the revulsion to signs that a lot of people apparently do, because businesses need to advertise. And as my eyesight deteriorates with age, I need to be able to find places. Thank
Can't
you.
understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, James. I put my glasses on.
May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Joey Posey, 420 South Nova, attorney at Storch Law Firm, and I'm filling in for the attorneys of record. So try to bear with me if I'm moving in a weird direction, but but I do know a little bit here, and just you guys I'm sure know just as well as I do that this property's it's been a struggle because it's probably been every restaurant in the world, and there's a few that I've liked, and they don't seem to work. And then it's next to the the old shoe store and Embry-Riddle building or whatever you want to call it, the Halloween store, and there's something about this little corner here that's been difficult. And I think the thing that is nice about this project is you have somebody who wants to come in from the ground up and say, look, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to put the money in, and working with staff, and I appreciate Rose's presentation and everything. That this is a very nice building when it comes to especially with car washes, and I know they're starting to come along, and with the car wash business that you get a lot more architecture and a lot more embellishment to it. But they really took the time to add that almost that modern look to it. And, when we're talking about waivers, we're not trying to avoid doing something. It's how do we make it fit? Because it's a little different than your typical car wash that what you'd be doing. And actually in the staff report, I think this helps give context to the signage. The Exhibit B in the elevations, you can actually see the relationship of how the wall signage will look relative to the building, and it's not imposing. You can just look at it and say, okay, I get a sense of what we're talking about here, and it's not both signs on the ISB corridor. You have one side on the corridor of ISB, you have one on the entrance side, so it's, you're not looking at two signs next to each other or something like that. So, and again, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, too, that I would imagine just thinking about it from an 81 square foot sign fronting ISB, I think we're on the lower end of signage when it comes to wall signage. But again, I understand and appreciate the concerns because, without keeping it in line, I can understand maybe how it would spin in a direction where everybody was unintentional. But I would argue that this is I think they got it pretty close here. That this makes sense for the area, and especially with the investment that I think it's going to be a wonderful project. So if there's any other specific questions, I'm available to answer them or maybe give some insight. But I'm excited, and as Rose mentioned too, that you don't really have many options when you're trying to wash your car, or because this is a subscription-based, they have other sporties in the area too, so you get to take advantage of those, and especially in the proximity of the racetrack, that you would, this feels like a need that somebody hasn't filled yet, and this is exciting. So.
I had a question. I don't know whether you're prepared to answer about the architecture. There's a lot of glass in this building. Yeah. I'm assuming that this is pertaining to the building department. The requirements for the South Florida Building Code, the sheet glass, pretty stringent. And with that much glass and the garage doors meeting all the requirements, that's a pretty big gap to fill architecturally. And I'm assuming that they'll be pulling a remodeling permit instead of a total tear down.
I think it's a tear down, and again, the glass part of it is a little bit of a compromise too, because it's one of those type of buildings that probably doesn't lend itself to glass, this type of use. But at the same time, we recognize that there is a quality element that if you can incorporate it and try to make it a part of your development, that we're happy to do it. So. I don't know the specific engineering side of it, what type of issues that will cause, but, the engineer of records obviously confident that this is something that that's feasible on their end, so. But I recognize what you're saying, I just don't know I don't have a direct answer to tell you, other than that it's a remodel and. A rebuild, sorry. It's a full rebuild, and that specific engineering that, they understand that the risk involved and that this is something that they're willing to commit to, so.
Yeah, because the South Florida building codes are pretty stringent on the amount of glass and, the types that you could use in the doors, and this building has a lot of glass.
Oh, yeah, we expect it to be expensive.
And with the permit, it's a total redo, nothing used on the site, the existing site whatsoever.
Yeah, they want to demo it.
Okay.
To the ground.
Okay. Other questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Robinson?
A comment, more or
Comments?
less.
Okay.
One of my concerns is that this particular property has a varied history of failure over the years.
It does.
And then the structures lingers for years. So in asking for all these waivers, God forbid that you should decide to pack up and go, we don't want to be stuck with a building or a structure that stands out apart from the others. And that's not a good sight to see along a major thoroughfare that comes into the city. So I'm not objecting to your car wash.
Right.
What I'm objecting to is the amount of waivers that might make it inconsistent with the other businesses so that you blend in. Instead, I want you to stand out so you can be successful.
Right.
But understand that we don't want a structure that's gonna linger if something should happen and just become a eyesore.
Right, and it's well taken. I think where I would maybe diverge and disagree is that, when you're talking about waivers, obviously there's waivers that, when you say the word waiver, you're not necessarily saying that it's a bad thing. You're also not saying that it's something that's avoiding an issue. That, in this context, in this case, what we're trying to maybe bring forward is that there was a lot of little tweaking that had to occur, especially from the design, doing a pitched roof at, in one direction and doing all the architectural embellishments. Well, the code doesn't say, show me those and that's the requirement. It's, that's the give and take. That's the waiver part of this where, well, if you wanted a window here, well, I would rather do, these other embellishments. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think just to, maybe characterize this, that a waiver somehow takes away from the quality or the compatibility isn't necessarily the case all the time. And in this case, you have a very nice building that is from the ground up. So you have a committed developer who says, I'm willing to risk and make this investment because this is a need and I know it'll work. So
I have a question for you. Is this a franchise?
it's not a franchise. It's a gentleman who does own the other ones.
Okay.
So he does have a track record of success with these. So there's a number of them in the county, and he is a local guy. So that's, and then another plus is, there's a blueprint to this, and he knows what he's doing, and this will probably be the nicest of all of them, just given the amount of investment he's making.
Absolutely. Wonderful, thank you. So I have a few green sheets, a couple of green sheets. Again, Mr. Posey was one of them. Mr. Nicholson on deck.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
John Nicholson, 413 North Granby Avenue. With regard to the pole sign, I like everything about it. I understand the problem with the location, and I understand we have very large signs on ISB. And I don't think Mr. Robinson's question was answered. We have a temporary pole sign next to Oak Ridge Bridge on the river. It was, a building was knocked down, they put in a marina, and they were putting in a condo. And so they wanted to keep the sign temporarily to advertise for the condos. Well, it's been 35 years as a temporary use, all right? The county put in a temporary parking lot behind the Ocean Center, and it was only there 17 years before the city rezoned it to make it legal, but it would not normally fit in a residential neighborhood. We have a temporary parking lot on A1A on the boardwalk, and it's only 35, 36 years old. temporary, all right? So temporary is kind of fluid for me. I don't normally consider 30 years as temporary. So this sign went in. I'm not suggesting that it be temporary, but what is the height? Because several friends of mine that have businesses have to lower, when something happened to their signs, they weren't grandfathered in. They had to lower it. Right there on Ocean Avenue, okay? He had to come down. It was destroyed during the hurricane. Instead of having his 30-foot sign, it came down to 15 feet or 10 feet, because that's the regulations. So I'm asking, what is the regulation for the sign? And if it isn't, then we not temporarily allow them to have another 20 or 30 or 40 years. Thank you.
All right. And did you want to respond to?
Well, and some of this is, I'm not quite sure what the city's ordinance is, speaking to the signage, but obviously the sign's important as part of the development and part of why we would want that icon there. But to speak to the height of it or to speak to the validity of the vesting, I mean, we're going through the PD process specifically for that point.
The
And
sign would be fully conforming with the land development code if it conforms with the PD agreement.
And then speaking to the compatibility, I can't imagine, given the nature of the location, that, a pole sign is necessarily a non-conforming aspect of it. So, that's part of why the development is the way it is, and, making sure that we actually have, like we were even mentioned, that, that icon to make sure you understand where the location of your building is very important for this developer. So I can't speak to the other aspects of where other locations in the city, but for purposes of this project, that's the point of going through this process, that we're, vesting and also trying to, from the ground up, put something that we want there, that a developer's willing to put the money into, and really have something very nice there. So, other than that, I can't speak to the specifics of the other issues, though.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any other green forms. Anyone else would like to speak for or against this project? Not, may I have a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, provided all the Land Development Code modifications are accepted, move approval of agenda item number 5, Plan Development General Rezoning, DV 2021-084, Sporty Car Wash PD.
Second.
Okay, it's motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Washington, may we hear item number 6? And we're gonna, Doug, do 6 and 7? Okay, so we're gonna read item number 6 and item number 7. We will hear both of them, we'll ask our questions at the end, and we will vote on them separately. I have several speakers, so we'll follow our 3-minute time limit. Ms. Washington?
Item number 6, Fairlawn Large Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment, DEV 2020-043 legislative hearing.
Okay, may we hear from staff, please?
Good evening, Doug Gutierrez, planner with the city. Excuse me. And I'll also be filling in for Hannah. I'll be doing both.
Okay.
This is a request by Robert Merrill, Cobb Cole, on behalf of Fairlawn Development LLC, Plain Site Management LLC, who are the property owners. This is for approval of a large-scale comp plan amendment, changing the future land use map and amending the future land use element, neighborhood K, to create a new issue H for 198 plus or minus acres. Property is generally located northeast of the intersection of Clyde Morris and Strickland Road. This is the aerial showing that it's undeveloped. The proposed amendment to the future land use map, the applicant proposes to change from Volusia County low urban intensity for 9.1 acres to city level 1 residential. So where are these 9.1 acres? They bought several properties, so they're scattered. If you can see this graphic shows the yellow, the bright ones, those are the ones that are being changed. The rest do have city land use. It's a little complicated because they're scattered. Then there's a proposed amendment to Neighborhood K development policies for the 198 acres. This is well, prior to this, there was an 88-acre parcel, and then this is expanded. The policies basically ensure appropriate development of the property and that the city infrastructure is maintained at an adequate level of service. The 198 now, used to be 88 acres, are shown in Exhibit A to DEV 2020-44, and it'll be developed as a planned development, which is coming up next. Maximum resident density shall be a total of 350 units, which comes out to about 1.7-ish, under 2 units per acre. On that portion of property designated Level 1 residential. And then a maximum non-residential intensity on that portion of property designated office transition of 60,000 square feet of gross floor area, which comes out to be an FAR 1.7. There's also almost 69 acres comprising of two parcels, and they're all to the east, and I'll show that to you in a minute. They'll be restricted to stormwater or compensatory storage pond location. So you look at the lower right in red, the Level 1 residential there, that's going to be the stormwater. The parcels that are county it's hard to see with the yellow, but it's all going to be Level 1. The little red pieces are still county. The impact, the potential would be a net potential decrease of 0.27 million gallons per day in demand, and also a potential net decrease of 2849 p.m. peak hours and 29,567 average daily trips. This is a decrease from what are currently there with this proposed amendment. Staff finds that the large-scale amendment is consistent with the comp plan. It does not represent urban sprawl because its utilities are available. City has available capacity to serve demand on available roads, water, and sewer. Based on staff analysis and review, staff recommends approval of the proposed future land use map amendment from county low urban intensity to Level 1 residential for the 9.1 acres, plus or minus, and the amendment to Neighborhood K, creating issue G, it should have been H, sorry, limiting density and non-residential square footage. Majority vote of planning board members present voting is required to make recommendations of this policy matter to the City Commission. And this is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission on May 3rd. And then second reading after the transmittal to EO and VGMC. That concludes this part.
Okay, Ms. Washington, let's take a minute. Would you read item number 7, please?
Item number 7, Fair Lawn, Plan Development General, PDG rezoning, DEV 2020-044, quasi-judicial hearing.
Okay, yes, sir. We continue, staff.
Me again. This is rezoning to Plan Development General for Fair Lawn. Again, a request by Robert Merrill, Cobb Cole, on behalf of Fair Lawn Development and Plain Sight Properties, to rezone 198 plus or minus acres of land from Volusia County Urban Single Family Residential R2 to the City of Daytona Beach Planned Development General, and to allow for a maximum of 350 residential units, as well as medical and office-related uses on 4 acres of property. That's the office transition part. I'll show you that. The office transition part, by the way, is just this part sticking right there on Clyde Morris, a little boot thing.
Foot, yeah.
Yep.
Again, it's the same location, northeast of Clyde Morris and Strickland Range Road. Again, the arrow showing the undeveloped portion. And then current zoning and the proposed zoning, which will be all PD. The applicant proposes to rezone 198 plus or minus acres from R2, County R2 to City PDG, 350 multifamily residential or townhome units, and the 4 acres of medical office-related uses concurrent with the PD. Again, that was the large scale, and the 350 units match. Also, there's a request to annex the 9.1 acres of the overall 198 acres from county to city. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do this. This is showing the how the development is going to lay out. It's going to stay closer to the southern part of the development, and the northern part is going to be left as is, basically wetlands. And then the compensating storage and stormwater would be on the portion to the east, on the south. This is turned that way, so north is to the left. So although the 198 acres remains undeveloped, most of the property was platted in 1925 as part of the Fairlawn Daytona subdivision. Now, prior to development of the property, right-of-way vacations will need to be approved for the platted right-of-ways. There's properties that are still, owned by people. They weren't able to purchase it, and they have to leave the right-of-way for them if they intend to develop it. So and basically that's what this is saying, that right-of-way access for the parcels that's shown in yellow, which are the ones that are not included, will be retained. So there are some land development code modifications. Building height, the request is to increase the max height for multifamily residential units from 35 feet for densities not exceeding 20 units per acre to 60 feet. The lot development criteria for townhome setbacks, they request to reduce the minimum front and rear setbacks for individual townhome lots from 25 to 20 feet. In parking, they're requesting reducing the minimum required parking for residential uses from 2 parking spots to 1.7 parking spaces. Regarding perimeter buffers, waive the requirement for establishment of a perimeter buffer when stormwater pond abuts another use type. I guess the stormwater pond would be a buffer. The signage, increased signage for a multifamily complex or townhome subdivision from 2 signs with a maximum area of 32 square feet per sign, or a total of combined sign area of 64 square feet to 2 signs with a maximum area of 64 square feet per sign, or a total combined sign area of 128 square feet. That's the residential signage. The off-site signage waive prohibit, I'm having a problem with English today. Prohibiting the off-site signage for uses within the development. Provide off-site signage supports uses developed within the PD boundary. And then I think this is the final request, is to waive the requirement that use be located a minimum of 200 feet from residential use or district. Provided that the concurrent annexation and the large-scale comp plan amendment applications are approved, all land development code modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval to rezone the 198 plus or minus acres of land from Volusia County urban single-family residential R2 to City of Daytona Beach Land Development General, to allow for a maximum of 350 residential units, as well as medical and office-related uses on 4 acres of property. Majority vote by the planning board members present voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission. This item will be scheduled tentatively for first reading on May 3rd, and then the second reading, which would be the public hearing, will be scheduled after VGMC and DEO approval. That concludes both presentations.
Okay,
If-
thank you very much.
If I may, I just want to add one thing. Hey, Joe, if you can pull up the supplemental slide that I provided to you earlier. If you take a look at the DEV number on this project, it's DEV 2020-043. This came in about 3 years ago. Staff has been working on this project with the applicant for the last 3 years, so there's a lot of moving parts that were associated with this. I wanted to give you an example of what we're looking at here. You see the slide that's up there on the left-hand side. In the red is the area of development that we're going to see what this project is. You'll see that top corner there, or the slide on the right, that's actually what it's platted for that type of development, that type of single-family development right now. So that's what we're going to be planning or developing from into what's being proposed right now. So, like I said, a lot of moving parts to this. I know the applicant is going to want to speak on this, but I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Let's see, questions for staff on item number 6 and/or item number 7.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
could,
sir.
and perhaps Dennis answered it a little bit in what he just presented. The delay in getting to this place, the neighborhood meeting was almost a year ago. Dennis, perhaps you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, and it has to do with the number of, or how long we've been working on this project that they wanted. In the past year, the project really hasn't changed that much from what was being proposed. So what went forward to the neighborhood meeting is really what you're seeing right now. There were some details associated with some of the access to the existing lots that they haven't acquired. We wanted to make sure that in the future, if those property owners were to come in to maybe want to develop their property for their rights, that we were allowing them to have the, or keeping the access in place for them to be able to develop their sites. So,
And in doing that, there's no need for another neighborhood meeting to
no,
go
no,
through that process.
they've gone through all of those requirements.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
One last question, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Doug, on the rezoning application, item 7, it says, is it fair to you, this isn't your item, and I know that, so, on page 4 of the staff report, it talks about that the property was platted as part of the Fairlawn at Daytona subdivision in 1925.
Yeah, it's an old subdivision.
I just want to be sure that wasn't a typo, wow.
Yeah, it's-
There's been a long tradition
Yeah.
of Fairlawn in this community, 108 years at least.
Well, if you looked at the lot development there, I mean, it's a grid pattern, small lots, typical of that, at that time.
You know, I think it was one of those where they went up north and they said, you want to buy some property in Florida? We have a lot for you, and
Yeah, there's a little square, there you go. Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
I could use
Mr. Newman.
some clarification on the large-scale comprehensive plan amendment. There were little patchwork pieces that were county
Correct.
in among what was zoned city. So in rezoning, that was just to sort of unify all of that?
Well, they're not part of the rezoning.
They can't be,
The pieces that are in red, the little islands, that's not part of the rezoning or the land use. So those are the parcels basically that they weren't able to purchase, that are still owned. They did a tremendous job of tracking down these owners because, many of the owners
Were
have
able to
passed.
purchase.
Pardon?
The ones they were able to purchase
Yes.
were the ones.
Those are the ones going to be,
And those were, that was for consistency, that,
correct,
that they were going from county to city designation.
yes.
Okay. That makes some sense.
Okay.
Hey, can you go back a slide? I just want to point something out in case the question might come up. I just want to anticipate this.
How far back?
The slide with the excluded properties.
That one or?
Yeah, that one right there.
Okay.
So one thing that came up in this regard had to do with the potential, and you wouldn't see this as a planning board, it's not something you review. I think there's some, is there some annexation that needs to occur as far as this goes?
Yeah.
And with that, we had to look at whether this would create enclaves, which would make it prohibited annexation. It actually, in each instance, reduces existing enclaves by bringing the properties that the owner came into control of into the city. So it is legal to do that, in case you're wondering. under state statute. And then as Mr. Gutierrez pointed out, the other issue had to do with ensuring that all of those lots that you see that are excluded from this application would continue to have access through right-of-way to the surrounding public road infrastructure. So that's something we required the applicant to do, and that's something that will be done as part of this.
Showing, yeah, there. That they're leaving the, it should be this one, actually. All those right-of-ways are being left there, so they have access. Those pieces in yellow are the ones that are not part of this. And so access remains in case you want to redevelop or develop it.
And this was part of the reason for the year delay. There were a lot of very in-depth discussions between city staff, including myself representing the city attorney's office and our deputy city manager in charge of public works, Andy Holmes, to make sure that those properties would continue to have access as you see on that sketch.
So that original plat from 1925, was that ever actually developed?
No.
Or it was just platted and never moved forward?
But the parcel or the development that Dennis showed you, that was, you know, that grid pattern, basically that's what it would have been.
Okay.
I have a question,
Okay,
And-
Mr. Winslow?
whether you can answer it or Mr. Merrill can. So the little parcels that are not being, they're still in the county. What's the zoning on them in the county?
It would be the county R2 zoning.
It would be the R2 zoning still, so a guy couldn't go out there and say, raise goats. Couldn't be agriculture or anything like that,
It's residential.
but still, the residential has a little bit of impact different than the city does. A little bit of leeway, and I'm seeing your face.
Okay.
I'll try it, but I'm not going to be the expert on it, I don't think. Rob Merrill, for the record, here on behalf of the applicant. I think the county has in their residential classifications a little looser in terms of some agricultural stuff. You know, you've seen in the newspaper in the last 10 or 12 years the chickens, and, you know.
That's what we do.
But I don't know. These might have chickens, and you know, they're far enough away that I don't think it'll be a problem. So this is an interesting case for people like Ben and myself, because it's got these real estate twists and, you know, annexation and platting, and so I'm fascinated by it. So it did take 3 years. There were some complications. Part of the 3 years was, I think, a little bit of a stall and some change in ownership stuff that happened on the applicant's side. So that it probably should have been a year and a half, really. But still, it's pretty complicated. I'll say the high spots I want to make sure I mention that Doug said to start the conversation. And then I'm going to say a little bit about platting, which I'm fascinated by. The comprehensive planning aspect of this, and you guys have seen us do this a lot, we had to change the land use designation on the county pieces because it had county land use. The other thing we did was a text amendment that applied to all of it. And we do this a lot in Daytona because we're allowed to. We started this trend back in the late mid-90s to do this. Well, the comp plan was adopted in 91, I think. So in any way, we have these neighborhood policies that we adopt that custom fit land use designations to certain situations. In this case, we limited the number of units that can be built on the property, and we limited the amount of the office development that can be out on Clyde Morris. And so what you have here is a reduction in the allowances. And that's the key thing that when Doug said that, I almost wanted to ask him to say it twice, so I'm just going to say it again. The reduction in terms of water impacts to the water system, the sewer system, transportation, which is a big, concern for everybody these days, it's going down. So your first, that answer to that first question is, should you amend this comprehensive plan? It's a no-brainer. The PD rezoning is what we're doing here now, and in large part, it's consolidating other zonings into a package that says, here's what this product's going to look like. As you know, these are custom zonings, every one of them. So yeah, Melverton, sometimes they have waivers because the fit doesn't work just right, but it's a balance. It's a negotiated zoning, if you will, that becomes a custom zoning for this piece of property, which is what you're seeing here. Let me back up to give you a little history for a second to talk about platting, because me, it's fascinating. So it's been probably, Dennis, when we first, were you even there? 6, 7 years when John Holdsworth came in here and started to talk about the idea of trying to do this? And we all were shaking our heads, including me, his lawyer. He said, I'm out here trying to, this is a 1925 plat. And what happens in platting nowadays is you show engineering-wise how this is going to work, and then you have to go either build the roads and the power lines and the water lines and the sewer lines, or you have to bond for them and have them be built within a certain amount of time so that you can sell lots to people so they think they can build a house on the lot.
And if I can chime in, that development that Mr. Merrill's talking about happened after the 1920s, when there were a lot of these types of paper plats
That's right.
that were created that then caused property confusion and problems. The state legislation was changed to actually require the public
To allow,
improvement.
to require this. So when you guys approve plats and we go through all these motions, it's because what happened was people that were living up in Jersey or New York went to some real estate office, and the guy says, hey, I got this land down in Miami and it's beautiful. Here's a picture of it. It turns out the guy goes down there and it's a swamp. You can't even build anything there, not nevertheless a road or a power line or sewer line. So the laws changed and now we do it right. This was one of those ones that they didn't do right. And I think there might even be some people in the audience. I met one nice lady who's, I think, great uncle, got this land when he was a captain going up and down the intercoastal. And I think he pulled into a real estate office and some guy pulled him in and said, hey, I got some land out here in the middle of nowhere for you to buy. And it didn't have roads. It didn't have a promise for roads or water or sewer or electric or anything. And so we've got some folks, I think, in the audience that may want to speak, and I want to make sure I reserve time to answer any questions they might have for me. But those are the people that you see in yellow on this overhead. And so what happened is John Holdsworth, who we all were shaking our heads and scratching our heads when he was saying he's going to come in here and try to buy up all this stuff and build a project out here, he did. The guy literally went around the globe and found these little parcels and, corresponded with people by all different means. And he's got great stories. He's not here today, but he has great stories about how he met the people and talked to them. And I got to talk to a lady today who's got a story, and she might talk. We'll see. But at the end of the day, we worked around all those pieces. We ensured that they would have whatever access the plat would have provided for them had somebody built the roads like they should have. And then we're actually building some roads so that we can build our residential product out here. And in the places where we thought the people if you look at the bottom right-hand side, I believe that might be one of the folks that's here tonight. We made sure that the roads that we built, we allowed them to use those roads to the extent they needed to get to the property if they ever decided they did want to build. So they probably thought they were never going to be able to have anything out here because if you look at it, if you ever gone out and look at it, you probably couldn't really see it because you had to go down to Strickland Range and go behind those apartments. And I drove back there one time because the subdivision that Dennis was showing you up on the northeast side, that really looks like somebody actually built based on one of these old plats, has a road a dirt road you can drive down if the gate's open. And I did that once, so I've been back there. But at the end of the day, what you're getting here is you're getting a housing product that probably never would have happened if this guy didn't perform this miracle and spend the time that he did to go find all these people. And I think it's a great product. I think what you're doing is you're seeing smart growth, clustering. So I think 60-something% of the property is going to remain green. I think it's 133 acres is not going to be disturbed. So Milverton, any bugs and bunnies or whoever's out there, they got a place to go. So I know you always ask about that, so I point that out. So I think it's good. So and then what happened was, in conjunction with buying all these little tiny pieces in that big rectangle, the piece that goes out to Clyde Morris was owned by Consolidated Tomoka. They own almost everything out there. So they were fortunate enough to be able to buy that piece so they have a way in from Clyde Morris. And then one of the wrestling matches we had for quite some time was how to find a way in with a secondary access, which you see in the upper right-hand side there that comes off of Strickland Range Road. So that was a feat because the county owned the property next door, and we had to work with the county to be able to get the right-of-way to do that. And so that was another complication. So this thing has been a Rubik's Cube of a land development project. And I'm happy to say we're here, finally, to put it in front of you guys. I think it's going to be a great project. Again, the mixed use, it's got the office component, so maybe somebody has their office there and they can also live there, and that kind of makes things hopefully pedestrian and at least some internal capture that we've always talked about. So I think this is a good project. I think it's, in my case, I thought it was going to be a miracle 6 or 7 years ago, but we're here to present it to you and answer any questions you have. And I want to reserve the opportunity to answer any questions somebody in the audience might have, because I know you got some yellow sheets.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a
Question? Okay.
on
Robinson and Ms.
on page
McLean.
5. You're requesting for
Sorry,
your
is this page 5 of the rezoning or comp plan?
Which one?
Just so it's
Which
part of the
number?
rezoning.
the
Number
rezoning.
7.
You're requesting to go from 35 feet up to 60 feet.
Yeah, it's
Is
interesting.
that the height?
It's the height, building height, 60. So what we're doing is
You gonna these are townhomes.
townhome apartments, it's a multifamily product.
So is it 6 or half a dozen when you say you've reduced over here and then you've gone up? You're not building out, you're building up.
Up.
So
That's right.
aren't we still having the same amount of usage or folks in the area or?
So we've limited the number of units by comp plan for the first piece, and then ultimately by PD, such that it's less than what you could build there now. That's kind of the punchline.
But you're just going up.
We're going up. We're keeping more natural areas, and we had to go up to get the units that we need to build to make the project work. Now, Milverton, let me say this. When you're comparing the high building heights, we've got 60-foot buildings all over the place. You were comparing it to, what you could build as a single-family home, 35 feet, right? And so here, we're condensing and we're doing a denser development in the smaller areas, and that's why we need the height. There are plenty of zoning categories that allow 60. This is a PD, so you pretty much custom fit it anyway. So I'm gonna have to go here, and at some point we're gonna change this. But when they want to compare what you can do to what you're asking for, and they call it a waiver, academically it makes no sense to me, because there is no zoning classification that I have now that I'm changing that says 35 that I'm changing to 60.
Technically, Rob is right. This is not it's not a waiver to the code, because they're allowed to set what their standard, what their height is for the building. What we do in the staff report, and it probably could do it a little bit better and be a little bit more clearer, is just comparing what maybe what the current zoning district would allow for the height versus what they're proposing. And sometimes it's an apples and orange comparison, but Rob's absolutely right. It's not a modification to the code. It's just a request based
So
on what the
what
PD
is
would allow.
required for this zone?
Well,
There's
it's a
all
P-
different
It's a
zoning
PD
classifications.
zone, so it gets established within the PD.
Are you asking what's required currently for the zone?
Yes.
We have different zoning on this.
Yeah,
property.
the current zoning has, it would be the 35 feet. Yes.
So it is a waiver from 35 to up
No,
to 60,
so
or a modification?
No, it's not a waiver, because the code allows them to set the height in their PD. So they can say, well, set the height in your PD. Well, we want to be 60 feet. So it's not a waiver because that's their request. What we're doing is just giving you a comparison just to show you what maybe the height would be in the current zoning district, but it's not a waiver.
But some of the things you have on your list are waivers. And if you want to talk about the ones that are, I can explain those to you as well, Milverton.
Not necessarily.
This
Well,
one's very simple.
yeah,
60 feet's
but-
what we're asking.
Yeah, I listened to one of your comments that you made in terms of, for me, it was 6 or half a dozen, as far as the amount of homes. You're gonna reduce the number from 25 to 20, which means the amount of people that's gonna be there. But you really haven't done that, because you're going up in height for the multifamily, for the apartments. You're going up another level, so that means more people. So the 20 that you've reduced from 20 to 25, you've actually put them on top of the 35. So that number really, it's a matter of playing the numbers, and it's not, you've not reduced the impact or the number of folks. You went from 25 to 20 out, but you went up.
So, Milverton, no. So let me say one thing. First of all, I'm looking at you when I'm saying this first.
Okay.
How often am I here? Pretty much every week, every month, right? Yeah. I can't blow any smoke in your ear and get away with it. You know that. So what I'm telling you is true, which is we are asking for fewer units than we can now build, period. End of story. How we configure it, we've decided to make it so we have more green area and taller buildings. The number of, and it's a theoretical conversation we're having. It's not real. What's allowed theoretically is X number of units. What we're asking for is X minus 20% or 30%. It's that simple, and Dennis can confirm.
But when I'm looking at it, from my eyes, right, you're not building out, you're building up.
We're building up.
So when you look at apartments, your apartment is not spreading out, your apartment is going up.
It is.
So instead of having 2 floors, you're going to have 3 floors.
Correct.
Okay? So the folks that would have been over here spread out is no longer spread out. They're now up on the 3rd level.
We are.
Right. So,
but we could spread them out and have more people.
Yeah.
More units.
I understand that. But what I'm saying to you is, when I look at it, I see the same folks. They're not spread out. They're spread up. So
you could say that. You could say that.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
wanna make
so when
sure that in your rezoning, that's how I'm looking at it.
it's just not more, is what I'm telling you.
Well,
It doesn't end up
if
being
you
more.
can tell us now that we're not going to get more. It's just the height is going up, but
Right.
not more.
Not
So
more.
when you build when you go from 2 levels to 3 levels, what happens to those folks the other 5 that's not there? Where did they go?
They're green space.
So
They don't exist anymore. We got rid of them. They're bugs and bunnies.
yeah, but they're going up on the 3rd floor.
It's not funny math, I promise, Milverton. Okay, Jessica insists that she wants to show the different version of the math.
I love math.
She's better at math.
Jessica Gale, Cobb Cole Law Firm, 149 South Road Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida. Hello, everyone. Just to clarify, the current zoning allows over 600 residential units. We are asking for 350. So we are stacking, we're clustering within the development, but we're going from over 600 to max 350. Those ones will be clustered,
30%, it's
but
probably more like 45.
correct.
Yeah, and
So my
I have a
percentages are not good, but my math was okay.
Yeah, I have a comment again to Mr. Robinson, what he's saying. What is to stop us from coming back 2 years, 5 years from now and saying, I need to build another, this many more units on this green space that I have? Is there a guarantee that we are not going to have that built? No.
No.
There's no.
Anybody can ask for
Oh,
anything.
Hold on. There's a guarantee
Yeah,
in the sense that that doesn't get approved unless this city
that's right.
approves it.
That's right.
Because in the PD agreement that would be approved if this goes forward is going to be a limitation on the number of units.
He means anybody could ask for anything. And
Of course, anybody can ask for anything
right.
anytime,
Right.
and I will tell
We
you.
may not be here.
And I will tell you, but you'll have a city commission and you'll have a planning board.
Yeah.
They may not be here.
And the city could not legally require them to relinquish their right to, at any time, as a property owner, ask for property to be rezoned or have their comp plan changed.
Right.
That's a fundamental right they have as a property owner. One reason why they might need that right, because by the time that's asked for, if it's asked for, there may be 50-story high-rises all around in 200 years when we're all watching from above, hopefully. So
We might be living underground after the bomb goes off. Who knows?
the property owner in that instance, it would be illegal to say to that property owner, because of a covenant that was signed 300 years earlier, they can't ask to use their property in a way that makes sense in the surrounding properties.
Right. And I think we've gotten smarter in a little bit with how we do business, because if we put them in smaller space and take them high up, we use less space. So we conserve green space for now, but then we can always come back later and say this. So we're saying we have X number of units or X number of acres, and we're only using this much. The bunny rabbits can have the rest of it or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, later on, we may come back and say, hey, we need to do this.
But you have to make a decision based on what you have in front of you, though, Tony. I mean,
Oh, I understand, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
We'll definitely do that. And it's fine, but I think that was the question that Mr. Robinson, is that correct, sir?
Yes, and it's about, you're not building out, you're building up, and then later on, that green space is still available, right? So we can come back.
No, to Ben's point, though, it is absolutely not available. It is bound to be preserved until someone else wants to do something here, and you get to say yes or no about it.
And in
It's that
point of
simple.
fact, speaking of covenants, to some extent, I think some of those wetlands will be covered by restrictive covenants because of the St. Johns River water management.
Right, so sometimes there will be actual real estate interests in addition to the proprietary aspects that we're talking about, the regulatory piece here. So belt and suspenders, but still, guys, we could say what if about anything all day long, and we'll never get anything done.
Okay, Mr. Weatherhouse, another question.
On the green areas, start out with that. Are they recharge systems?
Yeah, so most recharge, as I understand it, Noah, the highest and best recharge is in the ridge, out in Reimer Ridge, where we have dunes and high areas. Because the higher it is, the better it perks down through. So there are places here where we're going to be doing, as you saw in the previous map, the other piece of land, this is the big rectangle, is 100% compensating storage. We're going to put some places out there where there's any fill in the floodplain that happens, we have to compensate for it by adding more capacity for flood ways to go so nobody gets flooded. I know we've been recently, everybody's focused on flooding now because we've had a lot of flooding from all the rain we've had and all the storms we've had. And, all of that has been from old developments like the one that you saw in the picture that Dennis showed you that don't have any stormwater ponds. They don't have any compensating storage ponds. So in this case, the comp storage piece is almost, I'm not going to go too far down the engineering road, sorry guys, but we have the experts here if you really want to drill down. But at the end of the day, we have both stormwater retention, which does attenuation and it holds the stormwater, but we also have places where if there's a flood and the flooding has to be displaced to something, we have compensating storage areas. I think we've just started doing this in Daytona in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's relatively new. So that part's relatively new. The stormwater's been 20 years or so. So before that, people just built houses and driveways and roads, and the water just went wherever it went. And usually it went into somebody else's yard.
Well, see, that's a question. I'm an old Florida boy. The retention areas, no matter how deep you dig them, they don't retain any more water than whatever the ground table is. And the amount of building out there, I've been riding around through there, and it's amazing the amount of building, apartments and housing in the area. I think it's a great area to build in. It's just the question is whether it's going to retain the water. Is it going to be a surcharge area in the green area? And the empty lots there, when in that type of area, you're going to build up the roads and the lots, so they're going to be larger, or is that going to correspond with the existing lots?
So here's how it works in my amateur engineering opinion, and these guys are cringing, but it's pretty straightforward. In this regulatory world that we're living in now, different than you and I might have seen for many years that we've been here. I'm 4th generation here, so I'm just with you. We have to prove by engineering, science, not just our engineers, but the water management district's engineers, the city's engineers, the county engineers in some cases, that any water that falls on this land is not going to flow off any differently after we build the roads, the houses, the driveways, than it does right now the way it looks green.
Correct.
And it's science, and it's been proven in a lot of places. You didn't see Margaritaville flood, did you?
Nope.
Nope. So that's a project that was built out in the middle of a green field that doesn't flood because they built stormwater systems.
Stormwater and the elevation that they built there.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
There's the difference.
The point is to have somebody wants to argue that with me, come on up, because I know that the science on that is pretty clear and it's proven. So I'm here grumbling. So maybe I should sit down and let somebody else who knows more about stormwater come up and talk about it, and I'll try to respond with my engineers.
Rob, before you go, let me, if I could,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. I'm a relative new kid on the block here, but I do have an appreciation.
You've been around the block, Mike, I
Yeah,
know.
a little bit. And I do have appreciation for local talent such as yourself. And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the folks that are doing the work here. on development. They're out of Gainesville. Believe me, I know Gainesville well. My youngest went to Florida. It's not that far away.
Yeah, me too.
Now, the Plain Sight folks, they're out of Vegas, and I assume they have not done any previous projects other than this 3-year to 7-year Odyssey.
No, they have.
mentioned.
They have actually.
Have
So
they locally?
yeah. So do
Okay.
you guys have the list? You want to just recite the list to me? Jessica has it. Somebody emailed it to me earlier because we thought you might ask the question, Mike.
Okay. You guys are good.
I don't know. Again, Jessica Gow with Cobb Cole. Yeah, so the Fairlawn Development, and I will say that anytime anyone's based out of Vegas, are they really there? People incorporate in Nevada and Florida because we're business friendly. So
No argument.
the ownership group here, they also have a contracting arm. And so they're the same contractors who developed the Napier Apartments that Framework built, and they are on the Daytona Atlantica project. So they've got, 5 or 6 local projects that they're helping build right now. So
Okay, so it's going to be a little easier to solve the Rubik's Cube with them.
They're used to
because
the
they've had
process.
some,
Yep.
They've had some experience locally. Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
You good, Mike?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes,
One
sir.
more
Thank
question.
Thanks,
I-
Rob.
We have several folk.
Mr. Rob.
Robinson. I'm sorry.
I was going.
You're requesting that we go from the county to the city,
Some of the property.
some of the property, some of the property that you control. What is the benefit?
Well, first of all, there are county enclaves, they call them, places that were never annexed into the city that are surrounded by city now. And so by state law, we are required, when we can, to move the county land into city jurisdiction to remove those enclaves, because essentially they're islands, they're county islands, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we have a few folks on the green sheets. Again, please forgive me for if I mess up your name. Myro Likit, I believe. So if we get you, and again, when you come, please state your name and address for information at the desk, please. So, and you'll have 3 minutes, and this is for item 6 and item 7 together.
My name is Miro Lakic. My address is 206 Moore Avenue, Daytona Beach Shores, Florida, 32118. I own several properties in this Fairlawn subdivision. Parcel numbers 4233 2015 000010, 4232 0154 0010, 4232 0155 0250. Part of the story that Rob Merrill is telling you is not correct. He's been giving you information like the property's in the county, so he's annexing it into the city. The reason he wants to do that is because the property is wet and he's trying to get a liberal zoning over here by moving it to the county. He had other hearings before this where he met at the Holiday Inn Express in LPGA Boulevard. There was over 100 people showed up at that, all objecting to this rezoning. We're going to lose our access to the properties that I own here because of this rezoning, which wasn't addressed. Mr. Merrill's never even contacted me about this. The city already took the access that I've had before. On April 18, 2018, Ordinance 1860, most of the people in the subdivision, he's taking their access to get to their properties. We have direct access to our properties, on Integra Shores Drive, but we can't go there because there's a guard tower. And now they're going to go and do the same thing over here. Our direct access that we had before under Ordinance 1860, where you took it before, is basically making our property useless. He's labeling some of the property as storm recharge. That's directly in our property. Our property's high and dry. Why don't you use the property appraiser's website without the mapping, and you'll see the wetlands where it's shaded on there. And to go and change wetlands because he's changing it from the county to the city, it just isn't right. He's basically building on wetlands. You can see that about 65% of the property is wet. I think that My property falls under eminent domain. It's not going to cost me anything to retain an attorney, but it'll cost the city over 50 grand in attorney fees. Mr. Merrill will like it. He'll probably get 100 grand in attorney fees. So I think I'm directly harmed. I will probably retain counsel in regards to this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Ms. Dana Rhymes Jones. And that's again item number 6 and item number 7.
Good evening. Dana Rhymes Jones, 109 Tuscany Bend Street, also the Tuscany Woods Homeowners Association Vice President. We understand this development's coming. We know that. I don't really care for the bait and switch tonight, though. We need clarification. Is it apartments or is it townhomes? There's a difference. Also, if it is townhomes, are these going to be townhomes that are going to be for sale properties or rental properties? Also, with the height concerns, the 35 to 60 feet, are we going to be able to see it? Because again, our neighborhood is called Tuscany Woods, woods being a key word. Now, we are so concerned is because there was a project on LPGA that is apartments and it butts up to Grand Preserves Homeowners Association, and it's hideous. People who used to look at trees now look at the back of a parking garage. Also, I do have concerns, and just a pleasant warning for the property developers, going from 1.7 parking spaces instead of the 2. I wouldn't do it if I were you, because we already have driveways that are very short in our neighborhood, and it's a problem. But we also have not bugs and bunnies, we have bears and bobcats. And we just had a bear sighting on Monday in someone's backyard, and we love to see the wildlife. Are there going to be natural buffers in between these properties to where these animals can move around? I have concern for that, because if they don't, then we're going to have more animal and human, conflicts with each other, and that's a safety issue for all involved. Also, not excited about the second access being on Strickland Range. The Laurel Dunes townhomes, they have a second access there. It's also not a very pleasant project to look at. There's no tree buffer between Tuscany Towns and Laurel Dunes. The clear cutting is a bit much. Again, we understand these developments are going to happen. We understand property owners have rights. I get that. But the height, I don't care to be sitting on my patio, and where I used to see woods, I now see the tall building. I don't care to have additional traffic on Strickland Range. We already know where Tuscany Towns is. There's going to be more development. You can already tell by the roadway that there's going to be more. There's going to be more traffic coming from the existing roadways and entrances. We just know it's coming. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
May I, sir?
Yeah.
She did ask some questions. Will the applicant?
Merrill will answer those, and then he'll respond to them.
Okay, then. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. As we continue, Inland We Trust LLC. Item number 6.
Hello, my name's Emilio Sorelli. I'm the manager for the company Inland We Trust. We have 3 parcels in there. And I'm wondering, are we going to have utilities to our parcels? How easy will it be to connect if this thing happens? And this subdivision is no different from other subdivisions that were recorded and accepted back in 1925. Most of Daytona Beach, it was a subdivision that was recorded and accepted in 1925. So this doesn't devaluate this property. I stepped into the shoes of those owners And back then, they didn't need roads to access their property. They just cut a driveway and they went into their property freely. It wasn't required to have paved roads. The other thing is the zoning. We're going to be stuck with a zoning that we can't do anything with our property? How's that work? You know, you guys are rezoning everybody else's property except ours, so we're going to have spot zoning in there? Denying us, won't let us get a building permit, you know? So these are my concerns. I'd like to have them addressed. And I was never approached by the developer, by anybody, to purchase my properties. I've had my properties perhaps about almost 15 years. I've been paying taxes on it. And I did step into the shoes of the people who originally bought that property. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, I'm sorry, I have found two papers, one for 6 and one for 7. Okay. Also, this one, Mr. Jim Pickett. Again, item 6 and item 7.
I'm Jim Pickett. I live at 124 Tuscany Chase Drive.
That's good evening.
And I'm concerned about floods, okay? I should have made a bunch of copies, and if anybody would like, leave me their address or something, I'll be happy to mail you a set. Is it okay to come in here?
Yes, sir. You can just hand it to, and we'll pass it around. Thank you very much.
If you look at, if they could bring up this map, this thing on this, the one it has here on the sheet.
Joe, can you pull up the location map on the map series?
They're trying to.
Now, it's the one where you show exactly what's on here is the best one. Who's got?
Is that the wetland that's coming around there?
Yeah, go, there you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. First of all, my property and everybody on my side of the street on Tuscany Chase were right on the back of a flood zone. And I don't mean on the back, but the flood zone is encroaching on part of my property and has gone further since I lived there, okay? What these gentlemen are proposing is they're gonna get rid of their water and put it in the place where we already have too much water now. What I wanna know is what kind of guarantee are we gonna have if they miscalculate and I lose my house in a flood? The flood zone runs right down.
So you got it back. Okay. Okay. We have, Mr. Brink. Yes.
I just stood up to tell you
If you would just state your name and address, please, for the.
Janice Brink,
Thank you.
Palm Coast, 27 Cold Spring Court, Palm Coast. I just wanted to tell you I had hope when they contacted me that something would happen in this area for the good. My family has owned this parcel since 1930. And I'm one of the dinosaurs that don't know how long my warranty is. So is there any chance that you could resolve all these things and have something positive come up so that I could see something happen in my lifetime? Do any of you have any interest in this property personally? Well, I was just hoping. I know you have problems to solve for zoning, and I'm a realtor from the past. Sold Palm Coast, sold Maryland, sold New York. Anyway, I had hope. Now I hear that nothing's happened for 6 years, which is the last time I heard anything coming. And my plat maps are so old, I mean, my plat maps, that they're disintegrating. I had to go to a blueprint printer to at least put them out and recopy them. So 90 years is a long time.
Yes, ma'am.
So hopefully you'll get something resolved in my lifetime.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm an old dinosaur, hoping, hoping
Thank you.
something would happen with this property.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for listening.
Her great uncle Pete bought these. He was a yacht captain coming down the intercoastal back then, right after the Depression. Well, right after the stock market crash,
Nice.
1930.
And
So
I'm still paying the tax.
she inherited it, and squirrels, bunnies, bears, and foxes. I think it's snakes and gators. You can add those to the list. You guys will do a good job. I know it's a good city here.
But don't wait another 6-10 years. It is done. In my lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else, that would like to speak for or against this before Mr. Merrill? Okay, sir, it's all yours.
All yours, Ron.
Okay, I think I got 5 speakers. Janice was the last, and we had spoken ahead of time. I wish I would have spoken to the other ahead of time. I just didn't have the chance, and we can talk afterwards. We always can. I'll start by saying that the folks that came up here, this isn't the final word tonight. You guys are planning board members who make a recommendation to the city commission. You've done a lot of this, so you guys are pretty skilled at this, and so I think you take the recommendation from these guys who are professionals at it very seriously. And what you have here is a recommendation of approval on all counts for what we're doing today. When Janice came up, she's asking you, please do something. This has been hanging out for a long time. The 4 people who came previously and spoke, we're not going to speak again, are we? Just want to make sure I got that part clear. Okay, good. The 4 people that spoke before, I wish they could understand better what's happened here. Nobody's doing anything that's going to hurt them, in my estimation. So, Emilio, you've been doing this a long time. You've bought a lot of tax deeds. I know you've got some of this land that, if we weren't here, nothing's ever going to happen in my lifetime out there. I promise you. These guys performed a small miracle to assemble this land, and I think, as we said, they're willing to make a fair offer to buy your land. We wish we would have had that conversation earlier. But the more we can get assembled, the better in terms of how this works. At the end of the day, the first gentleman, Mira, I don't know you personally, but you said things about me that made it seem as though you did. The questions you raise, I think, are better suited to these 2 gentlemen over here. They're the professionals at their job, and I think I'll defer to them. The Dana, your question about the building height, and you might be able to see the buildings, and it would be something that you didn't want. I'm here to tell you that I kind of made a mistake tonight. I know that the project originally envisioned potentially having 60-foot tall apartments with a mixture with townhomes. My client had to go talk to his partners and make sure that we were right about this. But townhomes is all they're going to do, and it's all they intend to do, and we're willing to say we would amend the PD so the height limit is 35 feet. How about that for a touchdown?
Yeah.
Okay? So townhomes only, 35-foot height limit. You can take that to the city commission. Traffic on Strickland Range Road, I didn't really understand the basis for the objection on that, but what I will say is we didn't originally plan to have any access off Strickland Range. This was something that was a lot of back and forth with the city engineering department, with your transportation consultants, and all the professionals, including the ones on our side, that felt like from a safety standpoint it was important to have a secondary access. So that's how we came up with that. And I think the primary access is the one that we bought from Consolidated, we anticipate. So anyway, that's the only answer I have to that. No. So Dennis and Ben, I'm sorry to put you guys on the spot, but the first gentleman there, if you guys want to try to attempt to answer any of his, I'd appreciate it.
I can address to some extent the the discussion about the access, I don't have ordinance 1860 in front of me.
I don't either.
If we ended up taking away a property's access, that's already been done. But I do want to point out something. If Dennis, you could have the map put back up that shows the way the property's currently platted.
Talking about the single slide that I had?
The actual platted property that shows the area. Okay, so this is close enough, but Dennis pointed out earlier in this hearing that the subject, no, keep it on that. The subject property is the area in red. And there's a plat right now that has a bunch of streets in a grid pattern like you see actually built on this aerial to the northeast. Approval of this PD agreement would not have the legal effect of getting rid of any of the platted streets. The only way to get rid of those streets is to do a vacation of right-of-way. When and if that vacation request comes forward, nothing that's being done in this PD agreement ties the city's hands to anything. And in fact, we need to make sure at that point that if there is going to be a vacation, that we don't deprive people of access. We have to give people notice, all property owners notice, who have property abutting any part of that right-of-way that would be vacated. Now, there's been a conceptual discussion with Mr. Merrill's clients where they've represented to us that they own certain portions of the property and they don't own others. And somewhere in the presentation tonight, there was a map, I think Mr. Gutierrez showed it, that included and highlighted in red certain parcels that are excluded from this PD. Can you bring that up for a minute?
So that was actually the yellow. So the one you just had, Ben, was the one that shows the yellow were the ones that are still owned by some of the folks in the audience here.
Yeah.
Right.
And the red was to show the accesses that would remain.
I'm sorry, this is the map that I wanted to
That's-
show you. The red highlighted lines that you see there are all, if I'm not mistaken, these are all rights of way
That will
the city
remain.
would be required to remain as a condition of this PD. So if a right-of-way vacation later came to the city for approval, it would be a condition of that vacation that all of these streets, if they're not currently in place, and I think they probably are because it's a very small grid pattern right now, it would be a condition that those rights of way be dedicated. And at that point, although it looks from the map that all of the yellow highlighted properties have access maintained, although it looks right now that that's the case, at that point, if it turns out that any of them don't, and they'd certainly have the opportunity to come and object, and we certainly don't want to take anybody's property, we wouldn't vacate that part of the right-of-way that deprived them of the access. So there's a public process that we have to go through to vacate the right-of-way. This PD agreement doesn't shortcut or eliminate that. It also doesn't bind the city commission into a later determination as to whether to vacate that right-of-way or not. In fact, the city can't waive that police power obligation. It has to exercise it at the time when and if a request is made. So again, these plans at this point are conceptual. Nothing that would be done here tonight, or if the commission approves this PD, would eliminate any of the current platted access that exists. Now, all of that access, I should point out, is access on paper, because none of the roads have been built. And at some point, if any of the property owners wanted to develop their property, they'd have to build roads to drive on paved roadways. That would be their expense. It may be that to some extent, some of those roadway paths would be developed pursuant to this PD, which would reduce the cost of those excluded owners in terms of getting that paved access at a later point. But that's a merits question. It's not a legal question. I just wanted to focus more on the question about having taken access. I'm not in a position to know whether that happened or not. And that's certainly something we could talk to the gentleman about, as well as his concerns about being deprived of access now. So that's it as far as the PD goes, and the comp plan amendment.
Yeah, I just had a couple of notes over here. There was one thing that came up as far as maybe taking development rights that currently exist for some of the property owners. If it's not included within this PD, you still have your existing zoning and your existing land use. So anything you currently have, you will continue to have. So none of that changes.
If I can, so I think the concern was that because they would retain their existing zoning and not have their property rezoned, that they would somehow lose development rights. But the existing zoning for a lot of these parcels is, I think we established before, county R2. And the county R2 zoning category allows for development of a range of single-family homes, various densities. I don't know if it includes multifamily. And those rights would still be in place.
Yes, they stay. As far as the engineering for the flooding study, all of the engineering will take place at the site plan level, so all of that will be taken care of. So and reviewed. And as Rob mentioned, it's going to be the city that's going to be reviewing it, St. John's. So we'll go through that. The access to Strickland, I just wanted to make one comment on that. The project actually requires, because of the units, 2 access points. We insisted on that. The county insisted on that, and the city insisted on that. And that was one of the things that took a while to get to this point. So we did require that access to Strickland, which is a public road, and it's a safe access point for this property. So we wanted people to be able to use Strickland to get to that intersection because it's a safer point than just using the Clyde Morris. So there's a reason for doing that. So those are just the notes that I had, and I just wanted to.
And there is one last point I want to make. One of the concerns, and I don't know if it still would be a concern on the part of the citizen who commented, had to do with not knowing whether these would be owned or rented. You typically zone based on the use, not the user. We consider a use to be single family if the person residing in that is residing as a single household, whether they're renting or owning. And zoning doesn't usually get into the whether that party owns or rents that property. And there's nothing in the PD agreement at this point that would restrict ownership to live-in residents or require that they be rentals. If the commission were to ask our advice on that, we would tell them we don't think that's enforceable. Because again, zoning is concerned about, the off-site impacts of residential uses in terms of the effect of light and air on surrounding properties tend to be the same. Now, maybe that's not as much of a concern if in fact the PD gets changed to only allow for 35-foot high development, but I did want to clarify that for the planning board.
Okay, and I'm glad Dennis kind of touched on 2 areas that I wanted Mr. Merrill to touch on, which will be the access, again, for emergency vehicles as ambulance, God forbid, or fire trucks have to get into that area. It's a quick, easy way to get in and out.
Safety thing.
Safety. And then secondly, the gentleman that had the issue about the flood, that will be taken care of and taken into consideration. So I don't know if you want to touch on anything else?
No, I'm good if you guys are.
Just
I hate to keep you here all night.
One last thing, Rob, if I could. Discussions we're having on right-of-way, on planning, on the height change that you just brought up here 10 minutes ago. There was discussion talking about parking, and you know me in parking. My request, not a demand, it's a request, because of some of the changes that we're contemplating here, could we take a look at that parking to see if we could get back to the two units per unit as opposed to the 1.7? I don't see a specific reason other than it may make it work better to go down there. I'm always a big fan of have a little more as opposed to less. I'm just asking if you
we'll take a look at it.
Consider it.
We'll take a look at it. And Mike, I'll tell you that not only do we do these in PUDs now on a regular basis, in the last several years, we've gotten to the 1.7 range in several cases that have been built and work. So, but the other thing I want to tell you is we did a land development code change to allow that to happen, even if you're not in a PD. If you show empirical data, here's how we park these things in other places and they work. So for that, absolutely, take a look at it.
And the data you mentioned, I didn't see here, not saying that you couldn't back it up.
We'll get that for you.
Not saying that at all. Fair enough.
Okay, Mr. Roberts.
I think
One of the speaker mentioned about crime access. Is this going to be a gated community?
Not gated.
Not,
Not gated.
not gated? Oh, that's good. And about the affordability of these townhomes?
We don't have pricing yet in Overton. Good news is we've got a lot of affordable housing stuff that's coming at us now, and I'm really happy about it. One of which we presented to you guys just recently on Orange Avenue, and there's a lot of, I think, affordable housing coming our way. So I'm happy for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
All right. Done with me? I'll sit
All
down.
done.
Good job.
All right, board, we're going to look at item number 6 and item number 7. We're going to take item number 6 and vote on that first. May I have a motion, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Chairman, move approval of agenda item number 6, large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, DV 2020-043, Fairlawn, LSCPA.
Second.
Okay, it's motion properly second. All those, yeah, Mr. Robinson.
That's okay.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. Okay, number 6, item number 6 is carried and passed. Now we're going to do the same thing with item number 7. May I have a motion, please?
Yes, sir. Provided the concurrent annexation and LCPA applications are approved and all LDC modifications, including removal of the 60-foot height requirement, are accepted.
65, yeah.
Move approval of agenda item number 7, Plan Development General Rezoning, DV 2020-044, Fairlawn PD.
Second.
Okay, so the motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir?
point of order, or point of question. If we're amending the item, should there be a separate motion for that?
He changed it and he put it from 60 feet
I
to
included it in the motion.
In the
Mr.
motion.
McLean included in the motion that the height would be limited to 35 feet instead of 65 feet.
Remove the 60-foot requirement.
And to be clear, since I was the one who volunteered that on the record, and I'm going to bind myself to it, my comment was about the townhomes being 35 feet limitation, not the 60. To the extent we're building commercial on Clyde Morris, it was not intended to affect that. So just making that clear.
I'll be glad to revise my own motion per se. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Other business, as we look into it, downtown Blue Road, our redevelopment area board report.
We met Tuesday, the 21st. Had a presentation from Dennis. What was it? The site approval for the 400. What is it? North Street North. I forget what it's called. 400 North.
400 North Beach.
North Beach.
And the Framework Apartments.
The apartments over there by just north of Brown and Brown, and those were approved by the board.
Okay. Thank you very much. Midtown redevelopment area board report.
Midtown met March 14th at 6 p.m. here in the commission chambers. We had call to order, roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance, approval of minutes, normal agenda. We had staff reports from the police department, from code enforcement. We discussed redevelopment projects. That's where we spent most of our time, discussing redevelopment and what we'd like to see. It was a very good meeting. The best thing I think I heard out of the whole meeting was Bike Week. They literally, in Midtown, they had 2 arrests. That was all.
Wow.
With all the
Awesome.
people we had in town.
That's amazing.
They only had 2 arrests. I mean, and that surpassed everything else they discussed that night. But that was good to hear because we had more than enough people, both sides of the river, but to think in Midtown only 2 arrests, that was like, ooh,
Okay.
But we're moving along. We're actually accomplishing some things now.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Beachside redevelopment area board report, and he's not here. Public comments. We do have a public comment. Ms. Dana Rhyme Jones.
She left.
Left. Okay. Staff comments, and we do have an item that we need to discuss, and I'll turn it over to Dennis or Mr. Ben.
We'll probably both be doing this, but according to the Land Development Code, and as you know, we've had a planning board member who's not been with us for three meetings. The Land Development Code has a requirement within the planning board that if a planning board member fails to attend 3 regularly scheduled board meetings during any 12-month period, the planning board shall consider the cause of the absence, and if it deems necessary, may request that that member resign or that the city commission remove the member in accordance with the Land Development Code. Also, the city commission at any point can remove a member from the planning board at their discretion too. So it's a matter for the board to consider and to discuss, and I'll just leave it for the board.
So Dennis, one of the options would be to allow Tony to continue based on and my understanding is that he's steadily improving and hopefully will be here at some point in the future. That is an option we can consider.
So to be clear, the board shall consider it and may make a recommendation, but doesn't have to make any recommendation to the city commission.
Okay, could it be just status quo is what you're saying?
Right, and regardless of whether you do or don't make a recommendation, the city commission can remove any, board member at any time for any reason. So your decision not to send something to the city commission doesn't seal the deal, but you have the option of making no recommendation or recommending that the member be retained when you do consider that.
Thank you.
Okay, and if we can, just for discussion's sake, a little bit, Ms. Washington, you mind just sharing a little bit as to Ms. Sylvan's progress and?
And I just, Ms. Washington, I understand that Mr. Servance very well, but there's no obligation to get into details about what's going on with Mr. Servance.
Sure.
Medically or personally, so.
He's progressing. He was very, very ill, but he's progressing remarkably. That's great. And he's up and moving. He was moved to a facility where, a rehab facility. He's able to actually participate in rehab now. So he's doing much, much better. Much, much better. Okay. Yeah. He's been through a lot.
Well, we're praying for him.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, definitely, and he's been a valuable member of our board. He's been with our board for a number of years, so from chairperson on, and so this is not something I know he wanted to do. It's just something that happened, and so just kind of want to hear your thoughts on it, and we can make a recommendation, or we can table it, and we can just move on. So, Mr. Newman, let's just go around.
Can we visit him?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You'll let us know.
Well, I think his circumstances dictated his inability to come to these meetings through no fault of his own.
Right.
It's not just a matter of negligence, and I would be all for recommending his being retained as a member.
Okay.
I don't know the gentleman, so I'll kind of leave it up to the rest of the board.
Okay, Ms. Washington.
Well, I'm just going to say, as Mr. Newman said, it was circumstances beyond his control. He had no control whatsoever. He's come a long way, and I will tell anyone, don't ever think you know more than the doctors. When you go to the doctor, follow the doctor's orders. Real simple.
Okay, Mr. McLean.
Oh, I think I agree that statement couldn't have been a better one. I think we don't want to be in a position to put undue pressure on Mr. Servance, and given his circumstances and what he's trying to work himself from, I don't see the reason, Mr. Chairman, my fellow members, to make any specific recommendation. I think we move along status quo. We've been able to do that well up till now. And this way, when and if Tony is able to rejoin us, I think we'd all welcome him back with open arms at that point. So I don't think we want, in my view, put him in a position that he feels the need to come back sooner than he should. So that would be my suggestion.
And Dennis, you said he can even participate via.
Well, yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. How would the board feel about in the future, perhaps, I know we have to, the board has to discuss it, but perhaps having him participate virtually, if he's able to do that.
I think that would be an excellent idea. I know for me, I wasn't ill, but I was.
You couldn't get here.
I couldn't participate. And to be able to participate via Zoom, it made a world of difference for me. And I know mentally it would do that for him also, because he lived for this.
I'm
How
sold.
would that
That's
affect-
for me.
Yeah, how would that affect the quorum? Could you have an audio and have a quorum?
Oh, as far as him participating virtually, we've done this before, and through COVID we have done it, and we just recently done it with Miss Washington.
Yeah.
We have the screen up there, they participate, there's a video feed, there's an audio feed, so they can participate in the meetings, so it's as if they're sitting right there. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, it just requires approval of the rest of the board
right.
Right.
for his circumstance.
For each meeting,
For each meeting, right.
It
based
made
on
a
extraordinary
huge difference
circumstances.
For me.
Yep. Mr. Robertson, what's your?
I am in, concurrence with the board. I know Tony. I've known him for many years, and he's a very dedicated individual. And I think we need to ask him to what he wants to do, or what's he in a position to do. Because he does. I have health problems too. And somewhere along the line, I might be able to, not attend a few meetings as we get older. That's part of the aging process. I think he's done a very good job. We love his input, and his current situation does not take away. And we have a quorum, so his absence in a manner does not really negatively affect the board. And if we can get him involved, it's all about being involved, and technologies are such that we can get him involved, and we should, and maybe we ought to look at doing something with the rules about having technology become more part of our involvement, because the public can look at the meeting, by television or whatever, and I don't see why we can't participate by that too. We did it for COVID. So I'm okay with Tony.
Okay, and again, we can participate via Zoom. We just have to get approval as we come in, as Ms. Washington have done. So my thoughts are, again, there's pretty much a consensus of the board that we do go ahead and maybe have somebody appointed to reach out to him and see what his will is, or what he'd like to do. And pretty much from that standpoint, us as a board making that recommendation, or I don't know if we have to vote on it, where it goes before the city commission as just a recommendation from the board that we retain him at least until we hear back from.
The board's not obligated to take any action than considering, which the board's done.
Right. So, but as a board, don't we want to, well, I'm talking about, do we not want to at least let our voice be known and make it at least a suggestion or a comment or something so the city commission can take it? We understand the rules. If you miss 3 meetings, we understand. We all abide by that. But these are different circumstances, and I know they can remove us at any time, not an issue. We're here to serve the city. But this is somebody that have given and dedicated and committed long hours, many years to this board and to this city. And I think we should somehow in there give him that chance to whether he's able to via Zoom, or maybe he'll decide, I don't want to add insult to injury. When you're down, you really don't want to kick anybody down. Right. We understand business continues and we all replaceable, but somewhere in there, the human side comes up, and we ought to be doing what's right. We do a lot of good things, but sometimes not the right thing. And I think we ought to do the right thing as a board. So we could say nothing, do nothing, and leave it like that, or we can at least make a comment that it will hopefully get in the city commission ears, and they'll hopefully.
Well, perhaps, Mr. Chairman, we could do a little of both, not have a definitive statement, but certainly ask someone or someones to reach out and feel Tony out to see what he's comfortable with, what he sees the future as. And I'm just uncomfortable making decisions for him without knowing his circumstances.
Okay.
Well, I can say I've known him since he was 17 years old, and he's now 51. So I've been dealing with
Lucky
him
I'm
for
not
quite
good
a
at
while.
math, I can't figure that out.
I would think if he was offered the opportunity, he'd be more than happy to participate via Zoom.
Okay, so, we can make a recommendation. So what I would like to do is go ahead and make a recommendation. If the board denies the recommendation, that's fine, but either way, I'll get to, at least they'll see the comments. So I do make a recommendation that we retain them, or at least we consider that, or we contact.
If I can, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
are you suggesting that, or are you moving that the board recommend that Mr. Savance be retained?
Okay, well, they'll have to make their recommendation. Someone will have to do that, correct? My motion.
So you're asking for that?
Right, correct. Or do we do nothing?
I make a motion, we offer him that opportunity to participate via Zoom.
Since we're going that direction, I'll be glad to second it.
Okay?
I don't
Now,
think
should
you
I
need
change
to-
the wording?
I don't think you need to vote on that motion. You can't really offer it in advance.
Right,
You have to
we don't
make the
know.
decision at the beginning of each meeting. So you might want to consider whether you want to recommend that the commission retain him or do nothing until
What did he
you've
have?
gotten feedback from him. You can do any of those.
Okay.
Okay, make a motion, we retain him.
I'll second it.
So the motion would be to recommend that the commission retain him.
Recommend.
Right.
Okay. Yes.
And until we hear back from him, do we want to put that? Because I think someone is going to reach out to him.
I think the motion and the seconding shows a specific direction,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, so we do have a motion then, properly second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we vote on it, correct? Or we don't have, okay, all those,
You can do it by voice vote.
okay?
I mean, all
Yeah, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposers have the same right? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We need to go back just for one quick minute to public comment. And Ms. Dana Rhyme-Jones, if you come quickly, we give you that 3 minutes.
Dana Rhymes Jones, 109 Tuscany Bend Street, Daytona Beach, Florida. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all this evening. I do appreciate the process that was here done tonight. I do, though, want y'all to take this into consideration as future projects come before you. We don't have adequate emergency services. It took us 30 hours and 4 calls to get police to our pool a few weeks ago, and this was before Bike Week, and we had thousands of dollars of damage done in vandalism. So, and I'm a firm believer, after 20 years working in social services, of the broken window syndrome. You need to have, and it's nothing against the police. They're understaffed, they're overworked. Again, we understand development's coming. The additional tax bases are needed. However, we need to take a good look at our schools and our emergency services. Also, the product that's being built around us. The cottages, hideous. Those apartments I spoke about in front of Grand Preserve, hideous. Again, we understand the property development, the property owner's rights. However, it shouldn't infringe upon our quality of life as property owners as well. And we don't want to see our value of life depreciate. Also, the schools. Does anyone with the school board participate in this process or these meetings? I hope they do. The other issue I had with the access to Strickland Range was there's going to be probably an additional trees being removed. And it's going to be an eyesore with more clear building looking at that type of thing. And we do know there's going to be more access to Strickland Range because we know of Lakeside Professional that leads into Tuscany Towns and all. Again, we just ask when we're looking at these projects that we make sure that they are doing more natural buffers, not just cheap wooden fences or nothing at all. And, you know, just have them be good neighbors to the neighbors who are already there. But again, the emergency services is a major concern, and I do hope that we work together and try to figure out a solution to that. But again, I do thank you for this process and your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, last item, board members' comments.
I have a couple of things
Okay.
I'd just like to mention. One is that a lot of the arguments we hear about development and new development coming in are the same arguments we've been hearing over the years for a long, long time, if you've been here long enough. They were the same arguments that were made when LPGA was put in. They were the same arguments that were made when Plantation Bay was put in. Breakaway trails, they were the same arguments each time. And now those same people are arguing against even further development. It's a sad thing, but as more people move into the area, we need these developments for people to live. And there's more and more people all the time. Florida is a popular state right now. The other thing I wanted to mention was, as we see more infill development, we're going to see a lot of modifications so that they can fit their development to the lot that they have, because they're surrounded by other buildings in that instance. So as far as the modifications given with those PD agreements or developments, I think we're going to see a lot of that. And as long as it's explained in tonight's presentation, I thought they were very well explained as to why those modifications were called for. So that's something I think we need to learn to expect. And without any modifications, there's really no point in bringing things before this board if they're already compliant with everything in the LDC. We wouldn't see them. That's all.
Thank you. All right, no more?
No.
Ladies
I
and
have a
gentlemen.
question.
You were so close.
It's on the way down.
When we did approval of minutes, I was so into what was going on. Who made the motion that we accept?
Nobody did.
No,
There were no minutes.
We skipped it?
We tabled it.
We tabled it tonight.
Oh, that's why I have nothing here.
You're better than you thought. You're better than you thought. Ms.
Okay,
Washington.
I'm going, how could I miss that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
It
fine.
wasn't sent out on time.
All right.
That's why. So we'll do it next
Very
month. we say.
good.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful night.
Thank you.